Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and I had a subscriber make a statement, and I don't think they understood what my point was, but I'll flip in their statement and let's really clarify that, because he's saying, hey, you're acting like it's really hard to get enough protein on a vegan diet. You're acting like it really is that difficult, and it really isn't. Anyone who's done a vegan diet knows that it's totally possible. It's not that hard. You just got to kind of pay attention to what you're doing. So let me put on my +5 hat of weaponsmithing, do a little bit of crafting, and let's talk about that. All right, what people need to understand when I was talking about those things, I threw in the vegan thing as a caveat. What I'm trying to tell people is not that vegan diets you can't hit your protein, it's that with those you actually have to work. That people who eat balanced diets that are reasonably low fat, mostly whole foods, that are omnivorous, that you probably shouldn't need to track your protein at all to hit the numbers we're talking about. And that's the big difference, is that people are sitting around worrying about their protein intake as if they're in any real danger of not reaching it. And it's like, guys, if you're not sitting around eating Pop-Tarts all day and ice cream, this really isn't that big of a deal. It's all these junk foods that people try to fit in who track their macros that become the problem. That's the only reason. And the same could be said of people who are fruitarians. Those people are definitely going to have problems reaching these numbers. But he mentioned the raw vegan thing. So what people need to understand there is that I have been a vegan before. I've done vegan diets. I've tried it. And it does require more work. Now, easy is a relative term. There's different levels of easy versus hard. All right? There's different levels. And the problem is that on a vegan diet, trying to hit enough protein, is that you actually have to make sacrifices. You actually probably have to closely track your food. You've got to step back and say, hey, I can't allocate that many calories towards really low protein vegan foods. People who are omnivorous have a lot more wiggle room. And when I mean wiggle room, I mean to the point where they probably don't need to track their protein. It really becomes absurd and wasteful at a certain threshold. And what I mean is, let's go back to the numbers that most people not affiliated with competitive bodybuilding, and particularly protein supplements and supplement companies, have to say. You have to remember, anyone involved in that world may have some financial bias, or they've been told nonsense by people with financial bias. And there's a big difference. Generally speaking, what you want to gain muscle, if you're eating enough calories to gain muscle, you generally want 1 to 1.6 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight. Now, when I say that, people get these weird ideas that I said 1.6, that they have to get 1.6 to gain muscle. No, you don't. You'll gain muscle on the 1 also. You need to be in that range. All right, that's what that means. You need to be in that range, and if you're below that range, you're probably not going to gain as much muscle. And if you're above that range, you're probably consuming considerably more protein than you need to gain muscle, and it might have other adverse effects in your performance due to, less carbohydrates in training fuel. So there's a trade-off there. That's kind of your sweet spot, is anywhere in that range. It doesn't need to be at the top end or the bottom end. If you're in that range, you're okay. And what I recommend for fat loss, you need a little more for fat loss. You need a little more to hold on to muscle, and you need a little more for satiety. And the sweet spot range, and again, it's recommended for athletes who are trying to drop a weight class. All right, if you're trying to drop a weight class in a sport, you're trying to hold on to all your muscle. All right, and people need to grasp that. So this is what's recommended for athletes. Now, not competitive bodybuilders. If you're trying to get ripped and shredded and down under 10% body fat, I'm not interested in giving you advice, because I'm not interested in giving advice to people who are going to hurt themselves with bad practices. It's probably not healthy for you guys to do that. I'm not trying to give you guys unhealthy advice. So we're talking about people who are only trying to get down to maybe 10% body fat at the leanest. There's no reason to go under that, even particularly for an athlete. Unless certain people with genetic gifts can get lower and be okay. But the average person, it probably isn't a good idea. Now, that range is going to be 1.5 to 2 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight. Now, that's your range. Again, it doesn't mean you have to be at 2. People hear that and they hear 2. They don't hear the 1.5. Well, let's look at that for a minute. The average 80-kilo man who's lifting weights, and 80 kilos is a reasonable body weight for a guy who works out pretty hard, who's trying to lose a little body fat. He wants to get leaner but hold on to all this muscle. Wants to lose 5-10 pounds of fat. Okay, no problem. 80 kilos times 1.5 to 2 is going to be 120 up to 160. There's your sweet spot. 2,500 calories. It is so easy to hit 120 for anyone who's consuming whole foods, mostly whole foods, and particularly eats lean protein sources from animals on top of it. He doesn't need to track, and here's why. Look at some basic high protein whole foods. Whole foods are things like beans, pasta, whole wheat pasta, oats, things like that. All right, lots of vegetables. Vegetables are high in protein per calorie also. If you eat 300 calories, 400 calories worth of green vegetables every day, you're going to get a significant chunk of protein there. It's not insignificant, it's just that there's so much volume to the food and no one likes to eat that many vegetables. So setting that aside, look at little basic things. How much protein is in like 1,000 calories of beans, of black beans? I mean, I've got to do the math off the top of my head here, but I want to say it's something in the range of around 70, maybe 70 grams. How much is in 1,000 calories of whole wheat pasta? About 35. So if a person were to eat 1,000 calories of each of those, and I know that's an extreme example, they're already getting like 100 grams of protein. All right, that's 2,000 calories. That's still vegan range. That is still like in the vegan range of foods. And then on top of that, they decide to eat 200 calories of chicken breast, or 200 or 300 calories of Greek yogurt. They're way up in the range already. All right, someone is sitting there at 2,300 calories and they're already in their range for an 80 kilo man. And you know, the thing is, that's reasonable cutting calories for a guy who's 80 kilos. In fact, he might be able to cut on 2,800, depending upon his level of physical activity. And I generally recommend that if you want to lose weight, most of you just need to increase your cardio. Do more cardio, do more activity. That's the easy way to do it. If you only want to lose weight, you know, at a nice slow rate. If you're drug free and you want to hold on to your muscle mass, you need to be cutting slow. So it's easy for a person like that to hit 140, 150 grams of protein on 500 calories lower than probably what they could cut on, and to have all those discretionary calories left just by consuming whole foods, just picking whole foods that tend to be high in fiber and high in protein. And there's the thing you're going to notice. When you're dealing with plant foods, usually if they're high in fiber, they're usually high in protein. Don't believe me? Look at whole wheat pasta, whole wheat bread, beans. Perfect examples. Oats are actually still relatively high. Just a pattern I've noticed. If you're eating mostly whole foods, your protein's going to be pretty high before you even get to your meat sources. So the people who are then consuming chicken breasts and Greek yogurt and stuff every day and these other lean protein sources, them bothering to track their protein is absurd, because it is very, very easy. It is extremely common for some of these people, without tracking anything, to be in their range. It's kind of like, you know that you're getting so much protein in your diet that to be in the range that you need to be at, you shouldn't need to track it. And the example I gave is for cutting. You need more protein when cutting and you have less calories. It makes up a much bigger percentage of your food. Those people, it's that easy to do. So when people aren't losing weight, they're maintaining weight or trying to gain weight, they actually need less protein to gain muscle than they do to hold on to it in a deficit. Those people don't need to track. It's a waste of their energy. It's a waste of their time. So when we talk about easy, there's different levels of easy. Easy is not having to do anything, not having to bother to look, not having to bother to track anything. Just eat whole foods and make sure you eat a little bit of your chicken or steak or Greek yogurt or whatever your other thing is, or your egg whites. Just throw a little bit of those in and you're done. You're going to hit your numbers without even bothering to track. It's that easy. In fact, for me, when I've gone to try to track this, people are like, do you track your protein? No, I don't. I go check it when I've checked it every now and then just to see where I'm at. I think the lowest I've ever seen is 150, 140. And then I had days where I look and it's like, wow, I don't track anything. I just eat whole foods. I've hit 250 grams of protein when I went back to estimate roughly what I ate. So why would I bother to track? It's silly. No one needs 250 grams of protein for any purpose ever. So why bother to track? Those are just days I just happen to eat a little more lean meat because I happen to enjoy it. I like lean steak. I like chicken. I like turkey. Now, when it comes to the vegans, it does require a little bit of work, because look at the other numbers I just gave. Vegans are forced to make high protein choices exclusively. They don't have wiggle room. They can't just come in and eat an extra chicken breast to make sure that they threw in an extra 50 grams of protein. It's not an option for them. So when I say that it's easy on the other, easy as in effortless, requires no math, no double checking. You just eat whole foods. And if you're eating lean protein sources in there as an omnivore, you're automatically going to hit your numbers. The idea that you're going to miss those numbers in that range is only if you're really restricting your calories to the point of where it's not beneficial to you. And then it's your own damn fault. You're trying to lose weight that quickly and you lose muscle, you have no one to blame but yourself. It's not your lack of protein. Probably that you just chose to eat too low of calories. So with the vegans, you go back and look at that math again. They're going to be forced to eat high protein vegan foods for almost everything that they eat, particularly when they're trying to lose body fat to get enough protein. So that is harder. That requires actual effort. It might require you to break out a calculator and actually track. And that's the difference. Is that still easy? Yes, but easy is relative. If you don't even need to bother to do a calculator or track anything, that's easier than having to actually go in and track things. That's kind of like saying, well, I need to balance my bills and my budget and everything. It might require you to get work and actually write a budget. Whereas if you know for a fact you make more money than you spend every month, you might not need to actually track your budget for your household, because it's the same sort of thing. Is that, do you need to track the numbers or not? It's real simple. You might not need to write an actual budget if you know you make 50% or twice as much money as you're going to spend every month, and you got savings. Well, people who are on a diet that has just high protein foods in it, lean proteins by default, because they're omnivores, they eat meat, they eat egg whites, things like that, they're going to not have to bother to track for the most part. They shouldn't need to. They shouldn't need to worry about it. The vegan does actually have to track, and that's the difference. So again, easy is a relative term, and the vegan is going to be more limited in its food choices because they have chosen to cut out the highest protein food sources. All right, they've cut out the highest protein food sources known to man. They're going to actually have to make the difference up and actually be meaningful in doing so. They're not going to be able to sit around and eat 50% of their calories from bananas or whatever it is that they're going to choose to eat. So there's a little more work involved. They actually are going to be limited in selecting their food choices because they're going to struggle to get enough protein unless almost everything that they eat is a high protein vegan food, and they might actually have to track it. And that's the difference we're talking about here. That's not an insult towards people who choose that lifestyle. It's simply stating the facts about the work involved. They'll actually have to track and do some math. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.